He waited loyally for 300 years. I can rebuild him, but it won't be the same. Can't you see you're on the wrong side? The Emperor is death. For you, for me, for the galaxy.
Listen to yourself. If you use the Foundry to exterminate billions, how are you any better?
I'm doing this to save lives, not for glory. I will mourn for the dead and do what I must. As a young Jedi, I went to war. I accepted violence and darkness, and the Emperor called to me from across the galaxy. He made me a Sith Lord and named me Darth Revan. I nearly destroyed the Republic, and that nearly destroyed me. When the Jedi returned me to the light, my memory was shattered. It took me years to track and confront the Emperor again. I tried to end him, and he murdered my companions and locked me away.
What am I supposed to learn from all this?
I want you to know we're enemies for a reason. All those years in his prison, I could feel him in my mind, drawing on my connection to the Force. But I was in his mind too, fighting him. Only I've been both Jedi and Sith, and found clarity in the Force. Only I understand him, and his death is my responsibility.
In 2019, I stumbled across a video made by Star Wars Theory titled 10 Facts About Darth Revan. This video sparked an interest in the character. I enjoyed the complexity of a man struggling with knowing who he was and having to come to terms with the things in his past. I connected with the character and very quickly tried to find anything I could about him. And it wasn't long before I bought the game Knights of the Old Republic 1 and Knights of the Old Republic 2. I played through both games, making sure to be as lore accurate as I could, and I also read the Revan book. I actually read the book before playing the second game. I thought it was even better to play it like this, because some of the events of the book take place before Knights of the Old Republic 2. I loved noticing all the little details and realizing things like that Mandalore the Preserver, who you meet in Knights of the Old Republic 2, was actually Canderous Ordo, one of Revan's closest friends. This detail is not mentioned in Knights of the Old Republic 2, so I only knew it because of reading the book. I am told that there are some comic books going over Revan's early years during the Mandalorian Wars in 3976 to 3960 BBY. If anyone knows where to find these comics, let me know. I would like to read them. Now that I've explained my connection to the character, it's time to go into the title of this video. The first reason they should not make a Revan movie is because of what I'm going to call the Disney problem. I'm sure we all know how in 2012 Star Wars was sold for $4 billion. Since then, Star Wars has had a significantly smaller following. When we look at the Google Trends since 2004, the largest interest was in 2005 during the release of Revenge of the Sith. My favorite part of this movie is how dark it is and shows how much depth is in Star Wars. I am not going to say that Disney has not released any good Star Wars projects. These projects include Season 7 of The Clone Wars, the extremely underrated Star Wars Rebels, Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, most of the Ahsoka show, Rogue One, and a few more. But overall, Disney has not done very well, continuing or expanding the Star Wars universe. Disney has a tendency to water down most things in their stories. If you look at the sequel trilogy, you can see this specifically with how lightsabers seem extremely less deadly than they were in all other movies. In some scenes, it even feels like they are swinging around big poles rather than a lightsaber. One scene has a lightsaber swinging into someone's chest, and rather than cutting through them, it knocked the man back and gave him only a flesh wound. If you're wondering how this relates to Revan, I'll explain it now. In Revan's life, there was a lot of death and horror going on around him constantly. I feel if Disney were to oversee a movie about Revan's life, it would become too watered down and wouldn't show the dark and gritty parts of his life. As fans know, Malak, the main antagonist of the first Knights of the Old Republic game, had his jaw taken off by a lightsaber. It's likely that if Disney were to oversee this project, they would not show this because it would be considered too violent for the Disney brand. Another big part of Revan's life is the amount of people he killed as a Sith Lord. Disney would probably cut this from Revan's backstory because having a main character who has killed people and isn't a perfect person wouldn't sell good merchandise, and it would also be hard to make a good PG-13 movie about. The only way to have a really good Revan story made is to have it rated R and make it dark. The audience watching, we should not be able to easily empathize with him. And some people should come out of the theater thinking of him the same way people thought about Vader after watching Return of the Jedi. People saw Vader trying to do good, but no one thought that it excused his horrible actions. If Disney were to oversee a Revan movie, I can already see them making a terrible excuse of why he became the villain. I assure you, what he did as a Sith Lord will be nothing as bad as what he did in the original lore. Revan needs to be a character that you look back at his actions as a Sith Lord and think of them as pure evil. Of course, Revan was being manipulated at the time, but his main reason for turning to the dark side was a lust for power. Disney would most likely change this information to him being manipulated or being a puppet for someone worse, like what they did with Kylo Ren, who only turned to the dark side after Luke Skywalker tried to kill him. Don't get me started on that. The reason Revan is such an interesting character is because we know that he was not a good man, but isn't purely evil one either. We know he leans more to the dark side, but we also know that in the end he will do what he believes is right. Just makes him an interesting character, and the fact is, with the Disney format, that type of story will be snuffed out and replaced with a more childish and censored story. With the Disney problem explained, I would like to move on to a second problem making a Revan movie or TV series would cause. Simply put, Revan is too complex of a character to dilute into a saga of movies or a television series. One of the great parts of the Knights of the Old Republic games is the amazing reveal. What makes this reveal so amazing is that when exploring planets in Knights of the Old Republic, you can hear NPCs talking about how terrible Revan was and described him as one of the most evil people who ever existed. This world building makes the reveal so much better since you have the image of Revan being the most cruel man who ever lived, yet you have been playing as him and he's shown to be a hero for the entire Republic. One of the reasons I think video games are a great way for storytelling is because of how great the world building is, since you can walk through the world and experience it rather than just reading about it or watching it on a screen. The build-up of the reveal just can't be as good in a movie or TV show because they can't capture people's thoughts and what it's like being in that world in the same way you can playing a game where you can walk through that world yourself. The story of Revan is long and complex. When you think it's over, there seems to always be another chapter. For example, everyone thought his story was over with the end of Knights of the Old Republic 1, but they expanded upon his story, and what it was like for Revan to try to find out about his past life and try to recover his past. They do this in an amazing way, showing him having nightmares about something in his past life. It's quite an amazing story that can't be diluted into a few movies or a TV show. There aren't too many things I can see that can improve the way we experience Revan's story, other than just bringing the Knights of the Old Republic games to more modern game programs and engines. They shouldn't change the story or script in any way. I might add some side missions to make the game more fleshed out, and I would personally get rid of the character customization in the game. Have your character always look like Revan, as well as get rid of the multiple endings. Also add the voice actor for Revan back. I think the one they used in Star Wars The Old Republic is fine, and they can bring him back to voice him for the new games. Most dialogue can be reused, and I would bring back as many of the voice actors that I can. Since we have better technology, I'd also add to the open world, making each planet larger with more places to explore. I'd also love a small subplot expanding on the relations with the Tusken Raiders. It would be a good way to show more of the Tusken Raiders, expanding on the groundwork laid down by the Book of Boba Fett. Later on, they could add DLC where you play out the non-canon endings just for fun. As I said, there isn't too much to add to the story without ruining it. All in all, I feel like making a Revan movie or trying to remake or reboot it in any way will just end up being an insult to the amazing story we already have. When I first heard about the Knights of the Old Republic remake, I was excited, but now that it's been cancelled, I feel somewhat relieved. And maybe it would have been just a more modern version of the originals, but it could have also been a complete rewrite that would ruin his story, and I'm secretly glad that this game was cancelled. I think we should leave Revan alone for now, as well as all the story beats that are connected to him. I'd still love to see more mentions of him in the Star Wars universe, but only slight mentions would be good. I like it if the Acolyte series, they walk down a hall of famous Sith Lords and Revan is there. They could even add a statue, vandalized with the words traitor painted on by someone. A mention more than this could take away from the story. Revan is a character who is best left alone, as any more additions would dilute his story. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.